There was a cave hidden deep in the Blackwood Mountains, a place the locals refused to speak about. They called it the Whispering Hollow. This ominous chasm had been the subject of many a hushed conversation, whispered tales of hikers who ventured in and never returned. The local lore was as thick and impenetrable as the forest that surrounded the cave. Whispers of voices, soft yet insistent, were said to emanate from its depths, calling out in tones so familiar they sent chills down the spine. Enter our intrepid explorers, Jake, Emily, and Connor. Now they were no ordinary folk. Seasoned hikers, they had braved many a treacherous trail and scoffed at the face of danger. To them, the Whispering Hollow was just another local legend, a silly tale spun to scare children and tourists. The idea of a cave that whispered was laughable, at best. So armed with nothing but their skepticism and a thirst for adventure, they decided to explore the Whispering Hollow. As they approached the cave, a sense of unease hung in the air. The entrance was a jagged wound in the rock, gaping and black, a stark contrast to the lush greenery around. The air grew colder, carrying a damp, mouldy scent that seemed to seep into their very bones. Their flashlights, usually reliable guides in the darkness, barely cut through the inky blackness as they stood at the mouth of the cave. Despite their bravado, they couldn't shake off the feeling of dread that seemed to cling to the cave like a second skin. The deeper they ventured, the more the cave seemed to come alive around them. The walls seemed to breathe, and the air felt stale and heavy, as though it had been trapped for centuries. Their flashlights barely cut through the darkness as they stepped inside. Little did they know that this was just the beginning of a journey that would change their lives forever. The deeper they went, the more the walls seemed to breathe. A shiver of anticipation trickled down their spines as they ventured further into the abyss. The cave was a living entity, its heartbeat echoing in the hollow silence. The air was heavy, stale, as though it had been trapped for centuries, waiting for this very moment. The sound of dripping water echoed around them, a haunting melody in the oppressive darkness. Yet there was no sign of moisture. The air was dry, the ground beneath their feet parched. It was as though the cave was playing a cruel joke on them, a macabre puppeteer pulling at their senses. Then a whisper, a faint, fleeting sound that slithered between the rocks. "Turn back." It was a voice, or perhaps the wind. It was hard to tell. Emily froze, her heart pounding against her ribcage. "Did you hear that?" Jake, ever the skeptic, smirked, his flashlight casting long shadows on the cave walls. "It's just the wind, Em. Relax." His voice echoed in the hollow cavern, a stark contrast to the eeriness that pervaded the air. But Connor wasn't so sure. Something felt wrong, off. The air was too still, the silence too loud. "There's no wind in here," he muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. The words hung in the air, a chilling premonition of the terror that was yet to unfold. They pressed forward. The cavernous hollow seemed to stretch on endlessly, its walls closing in around them. Every step echoed ominously, the silence between each footfall heavy and foreboding. The whispers grew louder, more insistent. It was as if the cave itself was speaking, its voice a chilling breeze that brushed past their ears, sending shivers down their spines. They could no longer ignore the whispers, the words clear and distinct now. "Turn back," the cave seemed to caution, "go no further." But curiosity, that reckless temptress, urged them on. The air grew colder still, the darkness thicker. It was as though they were moving deeper into the belly of some great beast. The stone around them felt unnatural, slick and cold under their touch, as if polished by the hands of time and an unknown force. Then suddenly, the whispers ceased. The silence was deafening, the tension unbearable. It was the calm before the storm, the stillness that precedes a predator's pounce. And then from the abyss emerged a figure. It crawled slowly, its movements grotesque and disjointed, its limbs were stretched and twisted, its face a horrifying mask of an impossible grin. Its eyes, black as the cave itself, bore into them, an unending void that promised nothing but despair. Jake's breath hitched in his throat, his blood turning to ice. He stumbled backwards, his voice a strangled whisper that echoed through the hollow. "Run!" They bolted, their footsteps pounding against the stone. The cave seemed to come alive around them, the walls shifting and contorting in impossible ways. The once familiar path twisted and turned, leading them deeper into the abyss. The whispers grew louder, filling the air with a cacophony of voices that sounded all too human. The entrance was nowhere to be found. The cave had changed, its passageways morphing into a labyrinth of darkness. Connor, the youngest, stumbled, his foot catching on a protruding rock. He fell, skidding across the cold, damp stone. I don't know where we are," he cried, panic etching his voice. Emily, always the protector, reached for him, her hand clasping his arm. "It's the cave! It's messing with us!" she shouted over the rising din. Suddenly a glimmer of hope. Daylight! The exit was ahead, a faint glow cutting through the oppressive blackness. They sprinted towards it, their hearts pounding in their chests. The whispers turned into shrieks, the walls of the cave shaking as if in anger. The cave let out a deep, guttural sigh. In the aftermath of their bone-chilling encounter, a silence hung over Jake, Emily, and Connor. They kept their ordeal locked away, a secret as deep and dark as the cave itself. But for Emily, the cave was not done. In quiet moments, she could still hear the whispers, a ghostly echo that lingered in her mind, a haunting reminder of the whispering hollow. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe and follow us for more. Join us on TikTok and YouTube for more bone-chilling chronicles, if you dare.